I'm Bear Hart, and I'm here with Kurstin. Say hi, Kurstin.
Howdy.
And behind the camera and running the board and all of the technology back here, we have Ricky. Say hi, Ricky.
Hi, Ricky. Ugh, you're really going to make me do this, huh?
Groan emoji there. That's the groan emoji. We were talking about a groan emoji earlier because I told a really bad joke. In this episode of Bear Hart Labs Presents, the International Geek of Mystery Show. Look at that. I got all the way through that title without even reading my notes.
So proud of you.
We're going to talk about what I call the three gates. And there's some version of this in many traditions of many spiritual paths and faiths and religions and cultures throughout history. And this is just the version of it that I learned. And I originally learned this many decades ago, and I had more or less forgotten it, although I was practicing it in my life kind of unconsciously. But then I was reminded of it in very specific terms from a dear friend of mine, Stephen Barnes, who's a science fiction author, and y'all may have heard of him. He also, on his Facebook page, he's constantly giving pearls of wisdom of various sorts and reminding us several times a day to breathe, which is really a wonderful thing, and I love him for that. I love him for a lot of reasons. So the three gates is a philosophy of, more than a philosophy, more of a practice of how we interact with people in the world. And everything that I say or do needs to pass at least two of the three gates. And the three gates are, is it true? Is it useful? And is it kind? And if you can do things that pass all three, that's wonderful. But sometimes, or oftentimes, one may not apply, or you may be tempted to, cut some corners in them because you're mad or impatient or afraid. And as I talk about these three gates, in my view, I'm passing all three of them. Because in my experience, this practice is true because it makes my life better and it makes the life better of those around me, who I interact with, who I care about. And it's useful because it constantly reminds me of the impact of what I say and do, the impact that has on the people around me. And it's kind because it's always a kindness to treat people with respect and beauty and kindness. So, Kurstin, I want to ask you, as we talk about each of these three gates, I want to ask you what they mean to you, and we can maybe have a conversation about each of them.
I would love that. Thank you so much for asking.
Because I would really enjoy that as well. See, there we go. It's already kind, and we'll find out if it's useful. So what is the first gate? Is it true? What does that mean to you?
So as I was reading over these, to me, when I see true, you think of like true or false. But when it comes to day-to-day conversations, wouldn't the truth be objective?
So you mean subjective. Objective is something that is measurable, that is verifiable. Subjective is something that is subject to our interpretation, to our perspective.
Yeah, the objective truth is a philosophy. It's like a whole chapter
slap
in
me
philosophy.
if I correct your grammar and language too often.
No, it's fine. Subjective also, but I'm saying objective as in like, religion aside, spirituality aside, if I say there's a purple elephant sitting on the table, that's true to me.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So it's hard. I feel like I just wanted to bring it up in the sense that like...
I'm willing to accept that under some circumstances, but I had lunch with you and I know you ain't been drinking.
No, I'm just saying like some people believe things to be true, whether they are or not, but who are we to say?
So you're saying that there's both a subjective and an objective part to it.
So just like you've got these three gates, I feel like these three gates could be broken down into more categories.
So give me an example, other than purple elephants, of something that may be subjectively true.
So like when I go to bed at night, in my head, I know to be true, like my clothes are still going to be in the closet when I wake up tomorrow morning. That's like an objective truth. Whether they're there or not, I believe that my clothes aren't going to grow legs and walk away. I know these are all kind of like crazy and hypothetical, but...
So maybe an example of something more relevant to everyday life. Because, I think most of us, when we go to bed at night, we don't wonder whether or not our closet will be robbed in the middle of the night.
You never know.
Well, you have kids, so
Exactly.
that's
And
a
that is
distinct
also
possibility.
true for a lot of our, viewers as well. So
Yeah.
you never know. They create all kinds of chaos.
Yeah. Okay. So how does this relate to when you're communicating in your daily life? Just, day-to-day interactions with your coworkers or with your kids or, with, the guy at the Quickie Mart.
I just know that for me, when it comes to like these fun little, podcast episodes, I always have a tendency to overthink. And I know for a fact there's going to be at least one person out there that's like, oh my gosh, I think the exact same thing.
Well,
Ricky.
let's just take what you just said. You know that you have a tendency to overthink.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true?
I believe it to be true.
So I would call that a relative truth. And I'm just thinking off the top
Yeah.
of my head here because we haven't really measured. We haven't gone back over the tapes and said, is this behavior always true for you? And we tend to say things to ourselves about ourselves in terms of absolutes, like I always do this, or I always make that mistake, or I always lose my car keys.
That's a good one.
But the beauty of applying statements like that, applying the three gates to a statement like that, is I can say to myself, is that really true? Do I always misplace my car keys? No. I know where my car keys are right now. They are
they in
not
your
misplaced.
pocket?
They are in my pocket. I can pull them out.
Well, you went like this.
Here's my car keys.
Ta-da!
And so I have not, in fact, misplaced them
Okay.
at this moment. So if I'm telling myself, and I have another expression about this, I am my own highest authority.
Ooh.
When I speak to myself about things about myself, and I think a lot of us, we tend to tell ourselves the worst things about ourselves, and we're going to believe that. And that's going to reinforce those negative thoughts because, as I say, I am my own highest authority, and you are your own highest authority when it comes to how you talk about yourself. So it's worth putting those kinds of things through the three gates, isn't it? Say, is it true? Is it useful for me to believe that I always misplace my car keys? Is it kind to myself? None of these doesn't pass any of those gates, right? So I got to just stop telling myself that.
Well, that was just the one thing that came to mind when I was reading over everything is like, who's to say what the truth is? So,
And who's to say what constitutes overthinking?
you're right.
And is that a positive quality or is it a negative quality? Is this something that you like about yourself or something that you don't like about yourself?
I think it really, truly, honestly depends on the subject.
Right.
So, like something like this, I'm enjoying the fact that I'm overthinking because I'm getting your input on the things that I'm overthinking to think about it in a new way so that I can overthink some more later in my spare time.
But is that really overthinking or is it just thinking the right amount or thinking a lot? Because personally, I place high value on thinking. I've spent a lot of my time thinking and it's served me well.
I would agree with that statement. I believe that to be true.
Yeah, there you go.
When it comes to like my day to day, when I've got things that I need to get done and I've got gears turning in the back of my head that really aren't relevant to what needs to get done right then and there, that's when I feel like my overthinking becomes a little bit of an issue. But don't worry, I've been going to therapy, so
sometimes you see yourself as spending more energy on the analysis of a thing than is really necessary or useful or kind to yourself.
yes.
Right? And so this is what you call overthinking. On a scale of 0 to 10, where 0 is I never do that, and 10 is I do that every single moment of every single day, how often would you say that you actually think about things in excess of what is useful or kind to yourself?
Probably like a 2 because
Okay,
there are
well,
not enough
that's
hours in the day.
brilliant. That's brilliant. That's wonderful. I would say that is a better thing to be telling yourself, perhaps a more useful thing to be telling yourself than I always overthink shit.
Yeah, I like that. And you're not always losing your keys. I'm so proud of you.
I used to lose my keys often. And it's sort of a running joke with myself because I spend a lot of time entertaining myself, I gotta say. And I changed, and this was like really a huge shift for me, and it happened maybe 30, 40 years ago, because I'm old, where I realized that saying to myself, always lost my keys. Why do I lose my keys? Why have I lost my keys? Was reinforcing the lost factor of the keys. And instead, I switched it around. I said, where will I find my keys? Where have I put my keys? Where have I left my keys? So it's no longer about personal failing on my part, but rather it's about finding a solution. And I found just that little shift in paradigm allowed me to find my keys quicker.
Right.
And it allowed me to short circuit that behavior of just randomly throwing my keys someplace without even paying attention. Because now when I put things down, it's not just my keys, it's really a lot of shit. When I put things down, I now have more of a tendency, it's not 100%, but I now have more of a tendency to say, make a note of that in my mind. My glasses are right here. My phone is right here. My Dalek is right here. And so later in the day, when I'm wondering where my Dalek is, then I can say to myself, where did I put my Dalek? And it, like, in my brain, I can, go through the files and I can find the picture, because I took a picture of it. Oh, it's on that table in
Like
that
that.
room.
Well, and you're showing yourself a kindness, which is moving on to the next gate, which is kind.
Actually, the next gate is useful, but we can do kind first. If
I
you
have
like.
true, kind, useful.
Oh, okay. Well, I wrote it differently, but that's fine. We can do kind next.
Throw hands.
Because they're really co-equal branches of government.
That was going to be one of my follow-up questions, so I'll get back to that. But the first thing that I thought of when it came to kind is a very common, I say Southernism, but it probably happens everywhere. I don't know. But my mama always told me, Kurstin, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love the accent.
Thank you. That's my mother.
You can do the accent all you want around here. I really like that philosophy, and you can tell your mother that, or your mama,
Your mama. that
she's done a good job, because you've always been, in our interactions in our business, you've always been very kind, and sometimes it's felt like over the top kind, which I've learned to really appreciate about you, because it makes all of our interactions more than pleasant, just really enjoyable.
Well, and working with you, I started to realize that I do add a lot of fluff, when I'm talking, or do more of the people pleasing
And I
kind
don't
of
always
thing.
have patience for that, do I?
Exactly. And so, I'm the type of person that's
true.
hey, I need this from you only if you have time today, or only if you can get around to it, or if it's not too much, if it's not a big deal, or if you have a free second. But now with you, because you've shown me hey, if you need this, just ask. So I've learned through our interactions that I can be kind. I can continue to be kind, but I can be equally authoritative or a lot more straightforward, and you can kind of cut out the fluff, and that doesn't make you any less kind. It just makes you
Right.
get to the point.
So I think that a lot of people perhaps confuse kindness with this tendency to just over apologize for yourself.
Correct.
And almost be submissive.
Yes.
And those are entirely different things. And in my view, especially in my busy business, I find those things not useful.
Right.
Which would bring us
Go
into
right into the next one.
But I want to talk a little bit more about kindness, because in today's world, there's kind of a zeitgeist that kindness is equated sometimes with weakness.
Correct.
Or with an antithesis of this hyper-aggressive masculinity. I don't like to say toxic masculinity, but this hyper-aggressive masculinity that's been becoming normalized through some of our public figures. And they see kindness as weakness. And they equate that with negative qualities of, and they'll say that it's feminine and that it's not masculine and that it's not leadership and all of that hyper masculine bullshit is, in my view, entirely counter-useful, not even not useful, but counter-useful.
The opposite of
But
useful.
kindness is actually, I mean, as a leader, because I'm the leader of this business, do you find that my kindness enhances or detracts from my leadership?
So before I got to know you a little bit better, and this is true of all of my interactions prior to becoming a part of this team, I personally took someone's lack of kindness almost as rude or aggressive. I don't know if I came up with that myself, or if that's something that's just been embedded in me, because my mom said, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Yeah.
But other people's moms didn't teach them that. So they just said whatever they felt whenever they wanted to.
Well, that's not fair at all.
I know. I sound like a little crybaby titty baby, don't I? But so there were moments when you would come back and be like, okay, well, the first half of that whole, email, that was not imperative to the conversation and what we need to get done. Or I'd add all the fluff and you'd say, okay, just tell me what you want.
Yeah.
And because it's through email, it's kind of hard to understand that, or, it can come off a certain way. So it took like a little bit of rewiring in my brain to realize that you're not being rude, you're not being unkind, you're being straight to the point. And it's not, and kindness didn't have a whole lot to do with those interactions, but I got my little tiny baby feelings hurt because I always used to go over the top.
So that may actually be useful feedback for me in that I can sometimes spare a couple of extra words to be kind when I'm demanding that you get to the damn point.
You never said it like that, but you were just like, okay, what do you need? Like,
Right.
Underline, italicize, bold. What do you want from me? And I'm like, oh, well, I just need access to this. And you're like, here, done.
Boom, done, yeah.
And it took us 4 emails to get there, 4 back and forth
it could
emails
have been
to get
done
there.
in a couple of seconds.
Yeah, exactly. So
Right.
It's been a learning process for me, but I think that it's been a learning process in the best way possible because not only have these interactions helped me professionally by being able to say, hey, this is what I need from you. And you're like, cool, done deal. Done, period.
So I do have a tendency towards impatience. And I know this about myself and I acknowledge this about myself and I understand why it's like that is because my brain runs 1,000 times faster than any other part of me. And I'm always like,
On
at
to
the
the
next
next
thing and
6
at the next
things.
thing in my head. And I sometimes joke that I'm not a patient person, but I can do an impression of a patient person.
Yes, that's one of my favorite Bearisms, if you will.
It's true that sometimes I find the need out of kindness to slow myself down, and it's also useful. But I think kindness is the predominant part of this, to slow myself down and listen to the whole story, and then actually take a moment and consider all of the parts of that I would normally ignore and set aside to try to get to the point. And this is an expression of kindness because it's acknowledging the humanity of the other person, and it's acknowledging that their worldview is going to be different than mine, and they may actually have something to contribute that's tangential to what it is that I was looking for. That's a math term, tangential.
I was like, is he trying to say tangible?
No,
Intangible?
a tangent is, so you got a line and it goes like this.
Or like
and you
going
have
off
another
on a
line that goes
tangent.
like this, that's called a tangent. Because it goes in a different direction.
And going off on a tangent.
So, exactly. And so when somebody says something that, they give me all of these things, and I'm like, in my brain, I'm filtering through it all, looking for the things that I wanted, and ignoring all of those other things. Those are what I would call tangential to the point. But if I pay attention to those things, I may learn something useful or beautiful or interesting or something, either about the subject that we're talking about or just about the person with whom I am interacting.
So speaking of useful, I feel like when I was going through these...
Are we going on to useful now? Okay, we're going on to useful now.
So I feel like I'm in high school about to write a term paper, because how many papers have you read, or like, low quality papers that are like, Webster's dictionary defines this word as, you know what I mean? So that's basically what I did, because I was like, what is the definition of useful? It is able to be used for a practical purpose or in several ways.
That's interesting. That's what I would call a recursive definition because it uses its own word to define itself. It's like useful means to be usable. Okay. That's
Okay.
what does usable mean? And Webster's is brilliant at that. I find that Oxford is a little bit better, but sometimes that's just how you define a word. So Webster's dictionary aside, when you hear the word useful, what do you think of?
I guess it's less of like an adjective and more of like, I want to be useful to the people around me. Like I want to
like
be
a quality of quality of being.
Not used, but useful, helpful. You know,
Ooh, that's an interesting distinction.
I always like to like know that people can depend on me. And I guess that's what I think of when I think useful. Or like Ricky and I were just talking, you know, how I'm going to be a lot more available here in the near future. And she was like, oh, I can, you know, I need to be able to utilize, you know, your time. And so
Utilize, that's a word that I've often complained about is a superfluous word.
Now, was that true, useful, and kind of a thing to say?
Aw.
That's a really good question. It's true.
To you.
Is it kind? Yeah, I mean, I could construe it as being kind because I think that the world would be a better place if we excised the word utilize from our vocabulary. But I'll take, you know, I'll defer to
It made
Kurstin on
me
this.
feel good to know that she got excited that I was more available.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's what I think of when I think useful. Like I feel like I am useful to this, you know, company. I'm useful to this team. I'm useful to my family. People can depend on me because they know that I can get stuff done by being true, kind, and useful.
Yeah. So you made a distinction early on in what you were saying about useful versus being used. Mm-hmm. And we often hear the term being used in a negative connotation.
Correct.
So what is that distinction to you? What does that mean?
I just feel like because I have always been such a people pleaser that more often than not, I get used as a doormat. You know, people get what they need and then move on.
And then they discard you.
Yes. So that's what being, like, to me, that's what being used is like, okay, we got what we needed from you, kick you to the curb because you are no longer useful, you are used.
Interesting.
But that's just, you know, that's like, that goes into like high school drama, college drama, you know, family drama, you know, PTA drama.
Well, you know, that's an interesting distinction to me. And as someone who has my own peculiar neurodivergencies, I've heard people say this before. And the first thing that pops into my mind is, well, we're all being used all the time, and it's not always a bad thing. I have a job, and I do that job, and then I'm done with that job, and then they no longer need me, and they're no longer paying me, and they're no longer, you know, using me. Why would that hurt my feelings? Mm-hmm. You know, so I want to get more into understanding, because this is not something that I necessarily experience as a negative thing. And it would probably help me even in my interactions with other people to understand that distinction.
Mm-hmm. I think we could probably do a whole other podcast on that, because I got stories for days in all different facets of my personal life. And then stories I've even heard from other people about being used. And I don't mean it in a professional sense whatsoever.
Ricky, make a note. A possible future episode about being used versus being useful.
That makes me feel used. I have no commentary to add to this discussion other than
I'm just barking
Siri.
commands over here to,
Hey,
to
Hey,
Ricky.
Ricky, make a note of.
Should I preface or suffix that with "Thank you, Ricky. We appreciate you and
Not
we love
us
you."
turning this into like a joke.
a freaking circle
I
jerk.
know.
Well, and this gets off into that. This gets off into that sort of apologetic side of being kind, where it can be overdone to the extent that it's no longer useful.
Right.
Right. Okay, so we already talked about kindness, we've talked about true, we've talked about useful.
Boop. All the boxes checked.
So I'd like to leave you with some advice that I received from one of my teachers. So throughout my life, I have been sort of a spiritual seeker, less so today than when I was younger. And I investigated and spent some time pursuing different spiritual paths and different, even religious paths. And one of my favorite teachers used to have this saying, and he would say this before, any lecture that he gave. He would say, "Don't believe anything that I say. Test it for yourself and see if it works. And if it works for you, then great. And if it doesn't work for you, that's okay too." So I would like to say this to you because I'm here giving what I would consider spiritual advice about the three gates. And I just want to say, don't believe it, especially don't believe it just because I said it, because I am, as much as anybody else in this world, a flawed human. We all are. And my memory is flawed. My ability to even implement these things is flawed, as we've seen here. Sometimes I've really failed even with the people that I work with. My opinions are all filtered through my own personal experience and my own biases. My code has bugs. Just like
good one.
anybody that you meet on the planet. And again, it's a kindness to understand that when we look at other people and we interact with other people and they may say something that hurts us or that offends us or that we find distasteful in some way, just remember that this person also has bugs, that their life experiences are the filter through which they see their worldview. So if something you hear from me passes at least two of the three gates, is it true? Is it useful? Is it kind? I have these, I have a little sign on my desk. You might have seen it. It's made a little post-it notes. It says true, useful, kind. It may say it in a different order. I don't really remember.
Yeah, I know. We've got them all mixed up now.
But if the things that you hear from me on this episode or on any other episodes or from Kurstin or even from the disembodied voice of Ricky, if you find these things that pass at least two of the three gates, may it serve you well. And with this, all done. We leave you and we appreciate you and thank you for viewing our humble podcast. This podcast is copyright 2023 by the Bearheart Group, LLC. Bearheart Labs is a brand of the Bearheart Group, and our podcasts are produced at our studios here in fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada. Our podcast producer is Rickiana Denning, a.k.a. Ricky. Our co-host and hardworking administrator is Kirsten Hilgendorf, and I'm Bearheart. On behalf of all of us here at Bearheart Labs, thank you for listening to our podcast. We hope to have you back again soon.